The year 1902 was a turning point in regard to the public performance and recognition of Debussy's works for solo piano. On January 11th of that year, the Spanish pianist Ricardo Viñes premiered the suite Pour le piano. From this point, Viñes was to be the first important piano interpreter and proponent of Debussy's piano music. Here is the beginning of the first piece, Prelude. Debussy harmonizes the theme in augmented chords. The augmented chords form the outline of the whole tone scale. Debussy will use this powerful combination of the augmented chords and the whole tone scale in many of his works. The augmented chords take us to the whole tone cascade, the first true whole tone gesture in the great solo repertoire. We hear Debussy's signature sound. The cadenza brings the white key scale gestures into juxtaposition with the brilliant whole tone scales. The last line of music is a wonderful example of Debussy's incredible compositional subtlety. He takes the extract of the opening theme, A, E, G, and the retrograde, G, E, A, and harmonizes these patterns. We must begin the last line in tempo to make the relationship with the opening theme clear.
The Sarabande is just as radical as the Prelude. In this piece, we hear a technique Debussy will use extensively in the solo piano pieces, changing the entire effect of a melody through a change of register, sound color, and especially harmonization. Here is the beginning of the Sarabande. Here is the second setting of the opening music. The second line of music is initially presented in unison. It sounds like it's being intoned. And beautifully transformed with a new harmonization, now in the treble. In the third line, Debussy reshapes the music, using the 16th note motive as the beginning of a new melody. In the chord planing that follows, a whole tone pattern is hidden in the major seventh chords that form the accompaniment. I love those chords. I feel like in some ways this is almost where George Gershwin's language began. The kind of chord harmonies, this chord planing where they're just moving around. It sounds like this, something like almost Summertime by Gershwin. In the Sarabande, Debussy quietly begins a revolution in the structure and the sound of music written for the piano, chord sonorities based on intervals rather than triads. We can call these sonorities Debussy sound chords. When we listen to the individual elements, we can hear the complexity within this music. The melody is doubled. Harmonized in fourths. In fifths. And in some ways, most radical of all, seconds. All together. The Sarabande is especially radical when we consider that this piece of the three pieces in the Suite pour le piano was actually composed much earlier. Some date it between 1894 and 1896. So it really was the first visionary composition to use these chord formations that had very little to do with tradition.